You're listening to The Pump Fake. With your host, Jared Bailey.
All right, everybody, welcome into the latest edition of the Pump Fake. What, a little bit over 2 weeks away from the NFL draft, so slowly but surely we are getting closer. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, please be sure to do all of that fun YouTube stuff. Subscribe, share the video, like, comment. If you're listening as a podcast, leave a review. Joined today by my good friend Doug Farrar. Hi, buddy. How you doing?
I'm hanging in there. I'm plowing through.
Aren't we all? I saw something today that I feel like FanDuel put out simply just for me. They tweeted, who would you rather have, current Josh Allen or Ben Roethlisberger in his prime? I was like, you're asking me to pick between my favorite child at that point. What are you doing?
Yeah, it'd be like, who you think is a better quarterback from your childhood, John?
Right.
And I'm like, I don't know.
Oh, it's such a pain in the butt.
I don't know what to say.
I think in my heart of hearts, I know the answer is Josh, but I would feel like I was betraying younger me if I said that.
So, yeah, Elway and Steve Young are just my two favorite aesthetically quarterbacks of all time, and very similar in their overall demeanors on the field. I'm like, I couldn't pick.
What a perfect way to plug the list that's coming out here in the next month or so. The top 30 quarterbacks of the Super Bowl era, which Doug is part of the panel, and I'm very excited to put it all together. It's going to be awesome. Fun. I can't wait. Yeah, so that'll be coming out in the next, I don't know, probably month and a half. We'll put it all together, but
it's on my list of things to do.
Hey, don't worry. Like I said, we got time, man. We got time. But today, though, NFL teams, players, coaches under the most pressure in 2025. I felt like this was probably a good place to start, especially around this time of year where we got a little bit of a dead space between free agency and the draft, or at least the biggest wave of free agency in the draft coming and gone. There's going to be a lot of these guys who, for the past few years have been, high profile names that maybe haven't lived up to expectation. Teams coming off a disappointing year that have a lot to prove. And so we're going to talk about them today. So I'll start us off and I'll say this. I think the team that I'm going to talk about, specifically the coach I'm going to talk about, but the team in general, I think that, and I've talked so much about them over the past couple of years, just being violently overrated. Are we still on this Dolphins thing? Because I'm kind of over it a little bit. They have as many playoff wins as you and I since this whole thing started with McDaniel and Tua and Tyreek. And every other day, by the way, Tyreek Hill is just sending subliminal wide receiver tweets, posting like the deuces and stuff like that. I was like, all right, dude, either, get your way out of there or, like, we get it. I just want
to. Those are typical wide receiver tweets.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And all that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sure.
I think my biggest thing is that they haven't shown the ability to beat really good teams. And when they've gotten into the playoffs, they've fallen short. And I need to see something more from them before I can consider them like a real threat in the AFC.
Well, I think two things McDaniel is a genius at designing passing games. We know this, but there need to be multiple layers to your offense to succeed. I don't know if they have that at this point. And then the reports when Vic Fangio was on the staff and people bristled at Fangio's bluntness and the way he did things.
Yeah.
I'm like, if you have a problem with Vic Fangio and the way he coaches, you have a larger problem than that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know Mike McDaniel. I don't know how much he blesses his players with discipline. I don't know how that goes, but
right.
From what I know, I will say that if Vic is your problem, then Vic ain't your problem, because Vic is not a problem.
Sure.
We already if we didn't know that already, we certainly do now, because the man is. I thought he should have been Super Bowl MVP. So yeah, I could see that as it's a pressurized thing. In the court of public opinion, he gets by, he's a limited quarterback with Tua, and, the offensive line is what it is. I mean,
got to figure it out more now with Teron Armstead retiring. It's going to be a lot of pressure on Patrick Paul to take the next step.
Well, it's funny. I have had in the long time I've been doing this, I've had undraftable grades on 2 players who were actually drafted in the whole history. One was Ryan Mallett, who was selected by the Patriots, and that was more for off-field stuff.
R.I.P. Ryan Mallett.
Yeah, and then Liam Eichenberg, who I believe third round, and I watched, and the way I do it with college players, with prospects I don't like, the more I don't like and the more I watch more of the tape, because like, okay, I'm missing, maybe I had a bad burrito or something, and maybe, and sometimes I go, oh yeah, I watched the 3rd game and I got it. And there have been some personnel whiffs there too. So yeah, under pressure, I would say at this point, markedly so, because a lot is expected of McDaniel given his offensive genius. And when you're an atypical coach, that's fine, but it had better work. If you want to be Pete Carroll and sort of on your own planet, it had better work. And so I could definitely see that pressure there.
I'm trying to think of like a good comp for McDaniel. One that comes to mind is like Mariucci with the 49ers. Like, I feel like he was kind of one of those more like player-friendly, vibrant guys, and it worked to an extent where Steve Young was still successful, and they won games. But I struggle to find like a really good comp for him, because he is kind of an enigma in his own right.
Yeah, and I've talked to Mooch a few times. Mooch is, like, of course, the nicest guy ever.
Oh, of course.
And if you have guys who sort of take care of themselves, that's fine. But at a certain point, you have to drop the hammer. And Mooch could do that. He was very successful. But yeah, at a certain point, you do have to, in any industry, at a certain point, you have to be the guy nobody likes. And
absolutely,
some people, that's a problem.
For as much crap as I'm talking about the Dolphins right now, I'm wearing like a lot of Dolphins gear. The hat is a Super Bowl 6 hat.
You are.
I'm wearing a Dan Marino shirt right now. So like that was a happy accident that we've come around to right now. But the flip side of the coin, though, for the Dolphins is in the same division. I think that Josh Allen and the Bills are going to be under pressure forever until they win the big one. And that's, a different scale of pressure, because we've seen them be successful in the postseason, make it to multiple AFC championship games. Allen's coming off an MVP year. But at the end of all of this, I don't think these guys aren't going to be judged by, the great regular seasons they had or how many MVPs they won. It's how many rings do you have? And right now he has none.
I always go back to the Oakland Raiders of the late 60s and early 70s, where they lost Super Bowl II. They lost 5 straight AFC championship games to the team that eventually won the Super Bowl, whether it was the Dolphins or the Steelers. And Madden, I mean, he won 1 Super Bowl. The teams Al Davis set up for him won 2 more after he retired. But I mean, he invented the video game, or had his name on the video game, and he was a great broadcaster. He doesn't win Super Bowl 11, there's no Hall of Fame for him. 1 game. Yeah, it's really important.
Would you make the case that Tom Flores was a better coach than Madden?
No, God, no.
Oh, okay.
No, no, dude. I was up here in Seattle when he was up here in Seattle. No.
I forgot that he was in Seattle for a little bit.
Flores was on the Barry Switzer scholarship. Get out of here with that.
That's okay. See, if we're talking comps, that's a good comp.
I mean, George Seifert was at least a good coach. So, the fact that
to the wall, George Seifert, I'm going for it on every 4th down, and I don't care what you think.
But, Seifert went elsewhere, and it's like, it's good to have something good in place. No, I don't. When guys are close to the Hall of Fame and all of a sudden Jim Plunkett is Joe Montana, it's like, maybe not.
A lot of those Hall of very good guys.
You get into that discussion. Hall of very good is, of course. Yes.
Sure. What do you think about the Bills as of right now? Running back a lot of the same roster, replacing Mac Hollins with Josh Palmer to an extent. He's a good vertical guy. Still need probably a legit number 1 on that team.
They do.
Defensively, need somebody else opposite of Christian Benford. Russell Douglas is still a free agent. I assume they'll utilize the draft for that. But outside of that, I mean, they don't have like a ton of holes. We know what they are. We know they're going to be at least playing during divisional weekend, potentially again during the AFC title game. But it's about overcoming that Mahomes-sized speed bump that they always seem to get stuck on.
I'll tell you the acquisition that really interested me and could really define their draft is Ryan Nielsen as senior defensive analyst, because Ryan is a longtime great defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
And wherever he goes, Jacksonville, Atlanta, New Orleans, he's a Dennis Allen guy. So he's going to play press. Well, the Bills have not done that. And
they've been largely a zone team.
Right. I asked Brandon Bean at the Combine about this, and he said, yeah, it's about because I was doing a piece for Athlon Sports about the press coverage revolution in the NFL, press match especially. And he said, yeah, this is about expanding our processes and getting better at what we do. And so he spoke specifically about that, tying a receiver up at the line and then being able to match him all the way through the route, which is something I think the Bills cornerbacks have had the talent to do. It's just not been in, because it's not really what McDermott has preferred, or Leslie Frazier. The people they've had in the building, I'm not knocking Sean McDermott, for God's sake. I'm not that dumb. But the way the NFL is going right now with so much quick game, if you don't disrupt the receivers at the line of scrimmage and you're not able to match them through the first 10 yards especially, you're in trouble. And that's bitten them in the ass more than once. So I'm fascinated that, you bring one guy in, senior defensive analyst. I tend to think of him as he's going to be the press coverage coach. And I look at guys like Trey Amos from Ole Miss, who had like 153 press coverage reps, which is very unusual in college football, because usually it's quarters off against, you're playing 5 yards outside the boundaries, and you have to do specific things. I'm fascinated to see how maybe that shores up. Maybe that covers the 2 or 3 things that happen to them in every playoff meltdown. Maybe it gets more of the hump, but that to me it was one of those 5 people paid attention to it, but I'm like, okay, put a pin in that, because that is big.
By the way, Ryan Nielsen, the most recognizable mustache in the NFL. I saw him in Indy talking with their offensive coordinator, who's wise, Joe Brady. I saw them and I was like, oh yeah, that's absolutely Ryan Nielsen. I'm not going to miss that mustache ever. But
not quite Brian Van Gorder, but close.
Yes, but very, very good. And they have the personnel to do it. Like Christian Benford, even Roswell Douglas, like their style of corner, tall, lanky, long, like they have the ability to do that. And I think that's a great point that you make.
And you have to bring someone on who understands that if you don't have those people, because it's not as simple as, just get in his face.
Sure. Absolutely.
Because the problem with press is every time you guess wrong by a foot, that's a 60-yard touchdown. Bye.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you make of the Joey Bosa signing? Do you think that they're going to wrap him in bubble wrap and use him like a closer for like the first 17 weeks, and then once wildcard weekend rolls around?
Yeah, he'll be a situational guy, and he'll be just fine. I mean, it's kind of what they hope to get out of Von Miller, and this is it's a very deep edge class. So, and the other thing about Nielsen is he understands in his own way how to bring pressure.
Mm-hmm.
He was always very good with that as a DC with limited personnel at times. So, yeah, I think Bosa's fine and no one's expecting 17 sacks and 100 at this point in his career. It's fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
In line with what people are expecting realistically, I think it's fine.
I think if Joey Bosa goes out there, stays healthy for the most part, and gets 8 sacks, job well done. Job well done for them.
8 sacks. Well, it could be 8 sacks and 20 pressures, and the sacks are like cleanup sacks, or it could be 8 sacks and like 40. Where he's like, he just beat it.
Where he's just wreaking havoc and forcing errant throws and stuff of that nature.
Because, at his peak, a remarkable athlete. I mean, my goodness. I mean, his brother is obviously more the power guy with some speed, clearly, but Bosa could bend and just wreck you. It was,
how much?
Like pass rushes, it's a shame when they start to lose a little bit of the edge, just age and injury and whatnot. But yeah, it's it's fine for what it is.
I was going to say Baltimore's on this list too, but they just extended Harbaugh. They're about to make Lamar Jackson even more money. So it's going to be win or bust for them every year, but I don't think there's like a pressure thing there. You could probably say that for Allen too, because I don't think McDermott's going to be going anywhere. I think that he's got a safe seat. So does Allen. But I think for guys like that, like it's win or bust every year. And as their primes keep getting, shorter and shorter, that window is going to get a little bit smaller every year.
Yeah, I'll give you one team that is, I think, Detroit, because
absolutely
injury regression tells you they won't get nearly as hurt because it was World War III. But you lose Ben Johnson, you lose Aaron Glenn, and the coaches to me that are under the most pressure are John Morton, the new OC, and Kelvin Shepard, the new DC. And yes, they have both worked in the organization. Morton was the passing game coordinator a few years back. Shepard was the linebackers coach. But you're replacing two of the most astute assistants of the last 20 years, who each were force multipliers at the same time. You know, I'm sure Dan Campbell is a very smart football guy, but the way that was set up is he could be the inspirational, you know, rah-rah dude.
He could be the
like John Madden, you know?
Yeah, a little bit.
Very much so to me. Now it may be on Campbell, either offensively or defensively, like to pick up the slack. I'm not saying that maybe Morton and Shepard will both come in and be like, oh my God, we've never seen this thing they do before, and it's amazing, but that's a lot to ask. It's a lot to ask. And a lot of people will tell you, me included, if Detroit had been remotely healthy last season, they would have won the Super Bowl or would have been close. I believe they would have won. I think they were the best team in football halfway healthy. So those two guys and that team, that's a lot to expect in the wake of losing those two guys.
To build on that, I would say that Jared Goff himself is under a lot of pressure to prove, all right, I'm not just a product of an extension of Ben Johnson. Like I am capable of making the throws necessary, making the right reads, and leading this team to wins without Ben Johnson in my ear. And I think he
is. I mean, they're going to keep the playbook. It's going to be a bunch of digs, and they and the Niners threw the ball over the middle of the field more than any other teams, and Goff is awesome at that. What you don't want, and this goes back to days at Cal. I mean, I remember watching his college tape going, boy, that corner route was horrible. Anything to the boundaries, like, nah, keep him that way. And Goff is a tough dude. I mean, he overcame a lot early in his career when he had just horrible coaching and one of the worst rookie quarterback seasons of all time.
I always forget that Jeff Fisher was his head coach.
Rob Boris was his OC, and that offense should be locked in a shed and set on fire. The 2016 Rams, and of course McVay comes in. The first thing he says is, "Jared, from now on, your first read is going to be open all the time." He gave him the Mike McCoy, Tim Tebow package, and of course Goff did as much as he could. And kudos to him. It's like Kirk Cousins. No one expected this. Like Pete, not zombie Kirk Cousins now, but like Pete Kirk. You're like, okay, you maxed it out. Good for you. Hey, full marks.
Is he a Brown this season, do you think? I feel like that's going to happen.
Well, there's another team under. Here's the thing about the Browns, man. They bought, and kudos to Jimmy Haslam for finally publicly stating, yeah, we really
only took him 3 years.
Congratulations. It's like Trump.
A little late for high fives on this one, fellas. Like, relax.
I removed the tariffs that I installed 2 days ago. Sorry. I don't want to get into that. Really,
it's okay.
I'm sitting it out this time because it's like, okay, America, this time it's what you want.
Sure.
Trial separation from the country. The Browns really built this roster to win at this point. And when you go from 11-6 to 3-14, and the defense really regressed last year. They were second in DVOA in 23, I think, behind the Bills. And then they dropped to 25th last year. A lot of injuries. And after they traded Zadarius Smith to the Lions, their pass rush just died.
That felt like them just kind of waving the white flag at that point and just trying to get as much things as they could.
But yeah, you want like Odigizua, who I like. You want someone to try and, even if you're waving the white flag, you want someone to go, hey, not yet. I got 4 sacks for you. So that's a team under a lot of pressure. And whether it's Cousins, I mean, how much do you want to pay quarterbacks who can't play anymore?
I think that if Atlanta, are they going to just release him? Because you can't pay Kirk that much money to be a backup, right?
I mean, Atlanta would have to take at least half his salary to trade.
Yeah,
why would they do that when
exactly
the interest is minimal at best? Cousins couldn't move last year, and
that's pretty evident.
One of the most prominent boot action quarterbacks in the NFL has been since his Washington days.
I mean, he played my Steelers week 1, and it was very much like, all right, you're standing in the spot that you're standing in right now when you take the snap. Yeah.
That tape was absolutely brutal.
Couldn't drive it off his back foot at all. Threw a couple bad throws that ended up being picked off, and that was just kind of the theme of his season.
One. Yeah, that's not Cousins. That's not on Cousins. I blame the coaches for that one. Like, you can't play right now. You can't do what we need you to do. Get him the hell out of there. I mean, if they had put Penix in 2 or 3 games before, they might have, done something in the postseason. Who knows? But I don't see that happening. Obviously Kenny Pickett's not the guy, but
Kevin Stefanski said that he believes in him, though. Doug.
Oh, okay, yeah. The funny thing is, now they're looking at a quarterback class that is a lot like the Kenny Pickett quarterback class.
Not great.
I will say that, there are guys that intrigue me in a developmental / backup sense who would fit their offense well. I think Shedeur Sanders would fit their offense well, but am I taking him at 2? Mm-hmm. Am I trading up late in the first round to pick him? Sure. Why not? If he's there at 33 or 34, 33, hell yeah. And I think Shedeur is a better deep ball thrower than people think. The drifting in the pocket thing, yeah, okay, but he was pressured 203 times last year. What are you going to do?
That's a lot. That's
a lot. Cousins, I don't see it. But the point with the Browns is they built this roster to win now, and people are getting older and they're getting hurt more, and it's like
not great. What the Bengals? And we just talked about the Browns. Let's talk about the Bengals. I think Mike Brown and the front office are under more pressure than just about anybody in the NFL right now. Considering, all right, yeah, that's
who? Well, Mike Brown can keep spending 5 cents to everyone else's dollar, and Katie Blackburn keeps saying all kinds of stupid things about everything. And who's going to stop him? You think Roger Goodell's going to step in?
Probably not. Yeah, this isn't going to be
owning the Bengals is the least pressure I see. You can be a complete moron for 40 years and nothing happens to you.
That's fair.
Not pressure at all.
I guess pressure from the fan base, but even I guess it's not going to come with consequences.
At what point has that mattered?
Okay, all valid. In terms of winning, though, I think that it's
we're
great.
We're talking about franchises, Jarrett, where you have an internal sort of burning desire to win, as opposed to I own a team.
Yeah, I think that for fans and owners, that is a very much different But they paid T. Higgins, they paid Jamar, and that's great. And now we've got notorious quiet guy Trey Hendrickson going on McAfee talking about they haven't talked to me. I don't know what's going to happen.
A lot of unhappy edge rushers in Ohio, huh?
So I don't know what's going to happen there, but if you don't bring back Hendrickson for whatever reason, whether he, calls their bluff and he just sits out games, or if they just all out move him and, give in to his demands in that regard where they don't pay him, but they send him somewhere that will, who's going to play, who's on their defense right now that scares you?
It's a problem. They got some, I like Taylor Britt. he shoots his mouth up, then he backs it up. I like that. I'm buddies with Richard Sherman. Of course I like that. Yeah, they're going to be 9-8, 8-9, unless Burrow gets hurt again, at which point they're 4-13. Joe got hurt, so we can't expect anything from us. I'll mention another team, and this is the second time that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have done the total reset, just dump the entire roster and start over again. It worked the first time because you lucked into a lot of things, including your franchise quarterback with the last pick in the draft. It better work again.
Do you think they pay him?
I think they pay him not $50 million a year. They'll figure out it'll be more probably front loaded, probably a 5-year, $200-ish million. Because that's been I wrote a thing about not that the Cowboys are under any pressure, because that's the same thing. You just want to own a team. You don't care about winning.
Right.
I did a thing for the Guardian on how the Cowboys have wound up paying their players too much because they wait too long. And in between Dak's first big contract and the second big contract, the standard was the 5-year, $220-ish million deal with the 100 to 120 million guaranteed. And you can load that guarantee in different ways. Mm-hmm. So I think Purdy, oh my God, they gave Purdy a 5-year, $214 million deal with 120 million guaranteed. And okay, it's roster bonuses, and it can be restructured 5 times and all that. They're not going to pay him like Joe Burrow.
Yeah, they're not going to give him an APY of 55 to 60 million.
No, and part of the reason they can't is because of the reason they dump the entire roster, because they cap-wise have to start all over again. And that's fine, but we'll see how that goes. It worked the first time. If it can work the second time, hey, you look like geniuses. If it doesn't work the second time, then maybe we're having discussions. Kyle Shanahan, the finest offensive mind in football for a very long time, but as with the Bills, the tight games that go the wrong way in the postseason, that will catch up to you.
Yeah, I can't wait till they draft like Will Howard or something in the 5th round and everybody starts freaking out. It's gonna be great. And you're like, oh well, you could trade Purdy and start Mac Jones or Will Howard. That being said, signing Mac Jones is objectively funny. I'll give him credit for that. That's funny.
Yeah, and by the way, the equity they have for not getting burned at the stake for the Trey Lance deal.
Like they are. You brought up luck. They are incredibly lucky the Purdy thing happened because people just tend to slide the Trey Lance thing under the rug.
That is like, okay. Trey Lance is a good kid. There's none of the Deshaun Watson off-field attachment to it. But you take a guy, you trade that many first-round picks for a guy who started about, I think not even a full combined season at North Dakota State.
Yeah.
No offense, Neil Coulon. Don't come after me. Boy, you're lucky that isn't your epitaph.
Yeah, and they certainly got away with that because of they built a tremendous roster, and obviously Brock Purdy happened, and
Kyle will maximize any quarterback he gets. I'll give you another name, another pressure name, despite the fact that he is with the guy who maximizes quarterbacks better than anyone right now, and that's JJ McCarthy. Because you maximize Sam. You didn't want to re-sign him. You didn't want to franchise him. You didn't want to give him some sort of one-year bridge. McCarthy didn't play it all in the regular season. His Michigan tape to me was okay. The preseason was, he had a couple of deep 4 verts throws. That's nice. I thought the tape was 2nd or 3rd round, just based on what I like. And it's all subjective, and I could be completely falling on my ass with that one. But, if Kevin O'Connell believes in him to that degree, I have some inside knowledge of how amazingly intelligent he is with quarterbacks.
You're a big Kevin O'Connell guy. I know that.
And the more I know, the more I'm just blown away by how good he is at this. He's the best quarterback guy in the league right now, I think.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with that. And I wrote about it.
If you get McCarthy to because Sam Darnold wasn't, the last, the last couple of games were problematic. It was also, the Lions game was Aaron Glenn doing what Aaron Glenn never does. Aaron Glenn went counter to everything he does defensively, and the whole Vikings team was like, what? And
Amik Robertson was like, actually, I'm just going to turn into prime Dion for a game, and there's nothing they're going to be able to do about it, and it's going to be great.
And the Rams game was like, okay, here's the Rams front 5, and we're just going to kick your ass. But he turned Darnold into the best possible version of Sam Darnold.
Right.
Halfway through the season, we were all, is Sam Darnold the MVP? Holy crap. If McCarthy doesn't come up to that pretty fast, because that's another team that should be competing for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I wrote about it.
Joker out in that first year with McCarthy as the quarterback. I don't know.
I wrote about it in my power rankings, and I put them at 9. I was like, look, I don't know how good McCarthy's going to be, but I don't think he's going to be Nate Peterman simply because he's got O'Connell there, and he's going to get the absolute most out of him. So it's a very similar to the 49ers with Shanahan, like knowing that, all right, Kyle's going to get the very most out of whoever's under center. It's that exact same feeling with O'Connell, probably even to a higher degree because of what he just did with Sam, what he did for a little bit with Dobbs. Yeah. He's had a really nice track record.
The difference with Purdy, and we make the Mr. Irrelevant jokes, and you shouldn't pay him too much, but I remember someone asking Kyle, I think it was Purdy's 2nd or 3rd start after Garoppolo was just out. Someone asked Kyle, what's different about Brock? And Kyle was trying to be nice to Jimmy G. He said, well, we can convincingly throw over the middle now.
Right.
Like a third of the field is now open to us. At no point have I seen JJ McCarthy elevate. I don't see anything from what I've watched of McCarthy's tape. And it's, his college career in one preseason. I don't go, he does these 4 things better than Sam Darnold. Purdy, as far as reading defenses, as far as throwing with anticipation, as far as throwing with velocity over the middle of the field, there were things he did much better than Garoppolo right away. And that's, Brian Greasy, I know for a fact, saw things in Purdy that you couldn't even see on his college tape because the offense just didn't show it. But Brian Griese at some point went to Kyle and said, yeah, he's got it. He's there. So I'm not saying McCarthy will be terrible, but I don't see anything based on McCarthy's tape where I go, well, he's clearly better than Sam Darnold. We just need to bring it out. And a Michigan offense is a little different.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't know. That the difference to me is, and now anyone who's unimpressive can come in and be the next Brock Purdy. That's how the world works. But
of course, yeah.
With Purdy, there were like alpha attributes he had that the coaching staff identified very quickly, and that's why he became the starter very quickly.
Speaking of Michigan, what do you make of the Chargers right now in terms of what they're doing? I think that here's how I picture what draft day is going to look like for them. They're going to draft the Colston Loveland kid from Michigan in the first round. Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman are going to look at each other, say or yell, run the ball in unison and hug each other and laugh while Justin Herbert's sitting somewhere, his eye twitching because he has Ladd McConkey and enter name of receiver here to throw the ball to. I just think that their style of winning is a little bit outdated. It got them to the playoffs, and that's fine. But once you get into the postseason, you need that explosiveness degree, which they just kind of have lacked in recent years.
It'll be like when the Seahawks traded Max Unger in a first-round pick to the Saints for Jimmy Graham, and for 3 years, the Seahawks turned Jimmy Graham into a blocking tight end. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
Well, Harbaugh knows what Loveland can do. I think Greg Roman gets a bit. I think he gets a bit too much. I'm not saying he's Bill Walsh, but
sure, there
are like advanced NFL passing concepts. It's not just, run the ball and run, it's not RPO run the ball. And I think Harbaugh's smart enough to know they need receivers. Will that offense, Justin Herbert, will he, and it's funny, he's on my TV right now. The Chargers are playing the Bengals on NFL Network. Hi, Justin. He's like right there when I'm talking about him. Will it ever be to a point where it maximizes what Herbert wants to do? I don't know. I know I talked to Harbaugh for about 15 minutes during Super Bowl week in Vegas. Not this year, but last year. Mm-hmm. And I asked him about just Herbert, the skill set, like the raw attributes, and he just gushed, could not stop talking about it. He's so special, he's so this, and I just want to protect him. And so I think protection was the big thing year one. We're going to get alt. We're going to run the ball. I think Harbaugh, maybe Roman has that reputation. I think Harbaugh has more in mind for Herbert just because of what Herbert can do.
Sure.
I don't know that Harbaugh is as fixed to his priors as we may think in that regard, just based on one conversation I had with him.
Yeah, and hopefully in one way or the other, they get some sort of a deep threat in there. I've said this for the past maybe month or so. The Steelers just traded for and signed DK Metcalf to a long-term deal, which very much hints to me, okay, they don't plan on extending George Pickens. Metcalf,
they're the same. They're
the same receiver, exactly. Like it would be completely redundant. So if you're going to move on from him,
the number of times they run outs and posts and corners it's like 2% off.
They're largely the same receiver. So if you're not going to do anything with Pickens long term, trade him and get something for him. Los Angeles feels like a good place for him to go, just because he fills a need that they have, and I think that Harbaugh is a guy that can kind of reel him in if he gets frustrated on the field. And you don't think so?
Dude, if Mike Tomlin can't rein you in, you are hopeless.
I don't know. I think that there's if he went to New England, even I think Vrabel would be a good guy to have with him.
Can't rein you in, you are hopeless.
I don't know. I think it could work.
Do I need to say it again? If Mike Tomlin can't rein you in, you are hopeless.
I'm trying to think back.
There are like Luther Burden III.
Yeah.
Missouri. There was all this talk about, he's a jackass. He argued with his coaches. Well, you watch that offense. I don't mind a guy who's a bit of a jerk about the status quo.
Sure.
I would like a guy who comes in, especially with the Steelers, who are kind of a little too status quo-y these last few years, as you all know. I don't mind a guy who, in a positive sense, says, look, I'm holding up my end, you MRFers. Can we not be like this anymore?
That's fair.
That's not really what Pickens does. it's like he'll drop a ball and then point the finger at everyone else. I don't want that on my team.
Or argue with fans, or
it's like
fight Grant Delpit in the end zone.
It's not Antonio Brown, but it's a little too close for my. I would not touch that, especially the number of ball winners and like Kyle Williams from Washington State.
I talked to Kyle Williams at the Senior Bowl. Great dude.
I'm not just saying this because my wife Laura is a Coug. That guy, you watch him accelerate off the LOS.
Oh, he looked incredible on tape.
He's a badass. I think there are enough guys they can get in the draft. I wouldn't touch that.
Okay. We'll see what they end up doing.
Maybe Pickens will go somewhere and become the next Randy Moss, and I'll look like an idiot.
Wouldn't that be something? Obviously, the talent's there. I think that change of environment might be good for him to go to a quarterback that can get him the ball consistently and well, and be in a culture where, like, Chargers are a good culture. I think Harbaugh's done a great job at just transforming that. I talked to Sean Merriman, and he was very adamant about, day one being in there and just seeing the difference that Harbaugh instilled compared to what they had with Brandon Staley. It was immense. So,
but part of the reason those guys have great cultures is because they know enough to not get the guys who corrode your culture from within.
That's a valid point.
Now, Metcalf, I'm obviously Seattle, something.
Yeah.
He'll lose his mind a little bit, but it's more, it's not, I'm going rogue. It's like, I need to be calmed down. I need to be settled. I need to be ensured that everyone is as passionate about winning as I am. It's kind of that, that sort of thing, the Luther Burden thing.
And I feel like the Steelers would be a good culture for that.
I want guys like that all the time. What I don't want, and it's a fine delineation, is none of this is my fault. F you.
Yeah. And I think that Pittsburgh will be good for DK for that reason, because there's a lot of veterans on that team that will be able to reel him in and just like, hey, we got this.
He needs hard coaching with a velvet touch, and there's no one better. That's exactly what Tomlin does.
And you know what? When Aaron Rodgers inevitably signs, I'm going to talk myself into them potentially being an 09 Vikings team where Rodgers turns back the clock for a year and maybe they go on a little run. I don't think it'll happen, but I'll allow myself to potentially be surprised.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to try to be less of a miserable prick about the Steelers. That's my new, that was my goal coming in this year.
It's April. Hope springs eternal.
Yes.
Enjoy it while you can.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Or when they draft Jackson Dart in the first round, which I like Jackson Dart.
I know you. Yeah. You're on the Dart train. Let me talk to you about that.
I am on the Dart train. Yes.
Yeah. I'm not going to pretend to be a draft expert. We talked in the lobby about this. I'm just ready for the draft to be over. I didn't watch Jackson Dart, like a ton of Jackson Dart tape or anything. I saw a few games during the season, some stuff to like, some to not. What puts you on the Jackson Dart train? What's the over? What got you over on the train?
My comp for Dart is Bo Nix. Remember last year when everyone said, "Oh, Bo Nix was bailed out in an Oregon spread offense," and it was all bullshit because that offense was, full progression read all over the field, NFL concepts everywhere, and he gets with Sean Payton, who coaches quarterbacks harder than anyone. He looks great. I think if you put Dart in an offense where everything is defined, and not in a negative sense, like, oh, everything has to be defined for him, he's Will Levis. But here's the offense, and that Lane Kiffin offense, it's not a college offense. It's a lot more complex than that. He was a stellar deep ball thrower. Tons of explosive plays, really good runner. He compared him. He said, somebody asked him at the combine, who's your ideal quarterback to be? And he said, Jalen Hurts. I thought,
yeah. We talked to him at the Senior Bowl during this presser, and I can't remember who asked, who his three quarterbacks are that he really watches a lot of. He said Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and Baker Mayfield. I was like, yeah, that checks out.
Well, there is some YOLO.
The
game was a little weird.
I like some YOLO. That's fine.
I get it, but I as much as I'm a fan, just based on his tape, I'd probably give him a mid-second round grade. So does he go in the late first round? Yes, because he's a quarterback.
Yeah, of course.
The other guy I'll mention, just to get nerdy for a minute, Dylan Gabriel from Oregon.
Yeah, I saw you posted something about him the other day.
He had the best passer rating on throws of 20 or more air yards in the FBS last year. Not just in his class, in the FBS, the whole freaking thing. He had the best passer rating on throws under pressure. He's 5'11", 205.
That's probably being generous. I stood next to him. He's not very much taller than me.
Right. And you and I are about the same height, I think.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
It's like when I stood next to Drew Brees once at an event, and like 6'0". No.
Yeah, that's what I was. I stood next to Russ a few times in the locker room this past year. I was like, oh, okay, Russ, yeah, 5'11", my ass.
So Dylan Gabriel will throw cemetery balls over the middle because he just can't see. But he also had, I think, the second best passer rating when moving outside the pocket to throw deep over the middle. And he was also, speaking of guys who were good at Oklahoma, Baker Mayfield, he was also very good at Oklahoma. So I think that's a guy who, and I like shorter YOLO mobile quarterbacks anyway, personal taste. But that's another guy I think Dylan Gabriel could be interesting.
Yeah,
and I put that up on Twitter and I got roasted immediately.
Yeah, I mean, that's the social media landscape we live in. And look,
tape. Oh yeah, I don't do that.
Yeah. It's like
I might be wrong, but God, I watched the tape. Please.
Broncos fans got pissed off. I remember this past year at Nate Tice and claimed that he doesn't watch the tape when he was like saying that Bo Nix, like they do a lot of like window dressing to help him out. They run a lot of screens and stuff. I was like, well, yeah, of course they do that. And everybody's like, watch the tape. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm
Everyone does that. Shedeur Sanders threw like 150 screens.
Yeah, exactly.
He had no protection.
Exactly.
But
Doug,
I like that, and I think in an Arthur Smith offense that would work.
I think it could. And look, like I said, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert one way or the other when it comes to Jackson Dart. If he's the pick, I'll be hopeful about it and hope that it works out. And we'll see in the next, 2 weeks or so? I think it's 2 weeks from tomorrow the draft starts?
Tomorrow. Yep.
Goodness. I love it. Buddy, I always love doing shows with you. You are somebody who, and I tell you this every time I see you, but I love you to death. You've been somebody that I've looked up to for a long time, and I'm glad that we've developed the camaraderie that we have. What's something recent that you put out? What's something that's coming that people should go read?
Luke Easterling and I are doing our position list at Athlon Sports. Luke, off of his over 200 scouting reports he did for the Athlon Draft magazine. And I do the sleepers and the small school guys. So we're rolling that out and we'll finish it next week. A bunch of stuff for SB Nation. I did the buyer beware guys that went up this morning. That was fun. And then slandering Jerry Jones for the Guardian. So it's all good.
Is that the name of the piece? Just slandering Jerry Jones. It sounds like an 80s sitcom.
Well, yeah. It needs the right, slandering Jerry Jones.
Yeah, that'd be good. Coming on after the reruns of MASH is slandering Jerry Jones.
I see John Stamos is MAGA now. That was a disappointment.
Is he?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
He was at Mar-a-Lago doing something stupid.
Oh, interesting. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. But it's fun. This is the last 2 weeks, as I told you before we started. This is where I probably watched 125, 130 guys like credibly. Yeah. So now I'm trying to get to all the third day guys, and Greg Cosell or Daniel Jeremiah or Dane Brewer will mention someone. I'm like, oh crap, I've had him on my list for a month, and I gotta try and watch him.
I love it.
It's fun. This is my favorite because it's all about evaluation. I'm not trying to guess what some is thinking, blah, blah, blah. It's just, this is what I see, and let's get there.
I love it. You guys can go check out my power rankings. You can go check out the dumbest mock draft where I just went balls to the wall and created a bunch of dumb scenarios that could happen. It was a lot of fun to write. Nice. Yeah, like I said, coming very soon, the top 30 quarterbacks of the Super Bowl era, the panel, are sending me their list as we speak. So a lot of adding up and math for me to do here in the next few weeks, but very much looking forward to seeing that come together.
It's on my whiteboard, I swear to God.
That's okay. No, I very much believe you. So I can't wait for that to come out and everybody to read it. So then if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe. If you are listening as a podcast, leave a review. Doug, love you to death. We'll do this again very soon.
Thanks, bud.
All right, everybody. Talk soon. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is the Bump Fake.